Good morning. U.S. immigration is in a period of heightened restriction, tighter vetting, and increased scrutiny across almost every pathway, from visitor visas to asylum and long-term immigration. Policies introduced and expanded in late 2025 and early 2026 are reshaping how easily people can travel to, work in, study in, or settle in the United States, and many applicants from specific countries are suddenly facing pauses, longer processing times, or outright ineligibility. At the same time, official data and statements show that unauthorized crossings at the southern border have dropped to very low levels compared to past decades, which the U.S. government is presenting as evidence that tougher measures are working and will likely continue or intensify. A major development is a new pause on immigration applications from people connected to a group of additional countries, which has quickly become one of the most disruptive changes for families and individuals in the pipeline. The Department of Homeland Security has ordered that a wide range of applications from these countries be put on hold, including some visa applications, certain green card petitions, and various humanitarian or protection requests. In practical terms, this means that many applicants who have already submitted documents and paid fees are now stuck in limbo, without clear timelines for when their cases will resume or whether they might eventually be refused on security or policy grounds. This pause does not only affect new filings. Authorities are also re-examining a portion of past cases, especially those linked to refugee and humanitarian pathways from the same set of countries, arguing that older vetting procedures did not fully match current security standards. That re-evaluation covers some people who were admitted to the United States during previous administrations and who are now undergoing additional background checks or reviews of their histories. At the same time, processing of many new asylum cases had already been curtailed or slowed by earlier internal measures intended to manage a large backlog, and the new steps add yet another layer of uncertainty for those seeking protection. Overlaying this system of pauses and reviews is a presidential proclamation that significantly expands existing travel and entry restrictions. Under this proclamation, certain foreign nationals from a list of identified countries now face much tougher criteria for obtaining permission to enter the United States, whether for tourism, business, study, or longer-term stays. The document frames the changes as necessary for national security and the protection of public safety, and it emphasizes closer screening of travelers' backgrounds, travel histories, and possible connections to organizations or regions flagged as sensitive. The proclamation is designed not just as a symbolic statement, but as a working legal instrument that agencies must implement across consular posts, ports of entry, and electronic travel systems. In practice, that means more refusals at consulates, more delays under extra administrative processing, and more secondary inspections for those who do receive visas or travel authorizations. Legal and advocacy groups argue that these layered restrictions collectively amount to a major contraction of legal immigration and travel opportunities, especially for nationals of the affected countries, although the administration contends that people who can meet the revised security standards will still be able to travel. For those following immigrant visa backlogs and green card availability, the U.S. State Department's Visa Bulletin for January 2026 is another important piece of the current landscape. The Visa Bulletin sets the final action dates and dates for filing that determine when people in family-based and employment-based categories can move forward to key stages like consular interviews or adjustment of status in the United States. In the latest bulletin, some categories see modest forward movement while others remain largely stalled, reflecting the ongoing imbalance between annual visa caps set by law and the high demand built up over many years. One detail with real consequences for a niche but important group is the limited extension of the special immigrant category for certain religious workers. Legislation signed in late 2025 extended the validity of this category only through the end of January 2026, which means that if Congress and the President do not agree on another extension, no new visas in that category can be issued after that date. This creates intense time pressure for religious organizations and applicants who were planning to use this route, and some may find themselves forced to postpone or abandon plans if their paperwork cannot be completed in time. Looking at the border itself, official statistics published in recent months show a striking trend. Illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border have fallen to their lowest levels in many decades. Reports attribute this drop to a combination of stricter enforcement, New technological surveillance tools, more aggressive removals, and policy changes that make it harder to claim certain forms of relief after arriving irregularly. Border enforcement agencies have also highlighted enhancements in coordination with neighboring countries and expanded use of expedited removal processes as key contributors to the decline. Enforcement agencies are using this data to argue that the strategy of tightening both legal and illegal avenues is working and should continue. Public communications from border officials emphasize that the last year ended with very low crossing numbers and that the goal in 2026 is to build on that momentum, a phrase that signals intent to maintain tough measures rather than scaling them back. Critics argue that lower crossing numbers do not necessarily reflect improved conditions for migrants and may instead indicate that people are being blocked earlier in their journeys or diverted into more dangerous routes. But the government narrative focuses primarily on the metrics of apprehensions and entries. Legal immigration pathways are also being reshaped by intensified vetting initiatives, which include expanded data collection and more scrutiny of applicants' digital footprints. Government documents and policy analyses describe measures such as the mining of social media information, expanded questioning about ideological views or associations, and closer inspection of travel histories and financial records. This environment means that even people from countries not directly subject to entry bans or pauses may experience longer processing times, more follow-up questions, and a higher risk of delays or denials on security or credibility grounds. The atmosphere of heightened security has knock-on effects in areas like tourism, business travel, and academic exchanges. Cross-border tourism from nearby countries to the United States is expected to face new obstacles in 2026, including higher government fees, more stringent documentation requirements, and the need to navigate more complex application procedures. Travel industry reports suggest that these changes could discourage some short-term visitors, especially those with limited resources or those planning frequent trips, ultimately reducing the volume of tourists and shoppers who commonly cross the border for leisure or small-scale commerce. Business travelers and companies operating in integrated North American supply chains are also affected, because new travel hurdles can disrupt meetings, site visits, and short-notice deployments of staff. Even if business visas remain legally available, increased scrutiny and uncertainty around processing times make it harder to plan reliably, which can lead firms to adjust by relying more on remote collaboration or shifting some operations away from the United States. Over time, this could subtly reshape patterns of investment and collaboration across borders, especially in sectors where physical presence and on-site work remain important. Students and academic institutions are watching these developments carefully as well, because tighter entry controls and more aggressive vetting can influence prospective students' choices. While student visas have not been banned, the perception that the United States is becoming a harder destination to access, combined with stories of delays or denials, can push applicants toward other countries that are competing for international students. American universities, particularly those that depend heavily on overseas enrollments in graduate programs, may see shifts in where their students come from and how many are able to navigate the process successfully. Within the United States, these policy shifts arrive in an immigration system already criticized as fragmented and overburdened. Backlogs at consulates and within domestic agencies mean that even unaffected categories can experience long waits, while the additional layers of security review and the pauses tied to certain nationalities create an even more complex hierarchy of who can move forward and who cannot. Lawyers and advocates report that planning an immigration strategy now requires more contingency thinking, with applicants advised to anticipate sudden changes in policy or processing priorities. The broader political context helps explain why immigration measures are moving in this restrictive direction. Immigration has remained a central and contentious issue in U.S. politics, with strong pressures from segments of the public to reduce both unauthorized migration and certain types of legal immigration perceived as risky or economically competitive. Policymakers frame the new steps as responses to security threats and as ways to protect domestic workers and resources, while opponents argue that the changes undermine America's traditional role as a destination for immigrants and disproportionately harm people from certain regions or backgrounds. For families and individuals abroad, the immediate consequences are often practical and personal. postponed reunions, delayed educational plans, stalled job opportunities, or prolonged uncertainty about safety and legal status. People who might previously have assumed that a straightforward visit to the United States would be possible now must navigate a more unpredictable environment, gathering more documents, facing more questions, and accepting that approvals cannot be taken for granted. Those already in the pipeline are anxiously following agency announcements, official bulletins, and news reports to see whether their paths will open or close in the months ahead. Overall, current U.S. immigration developments point toward a climate of caution and control, where security and enforcement take priority over openness and ease of movement. Pauses for applicants from specific countries, expanded travel and entry bans, tighter vetting, and continuing backlogs combine to make both temporary travel and long-term immigration more challenging than in the recent past. For anyone affected or interested, staying closely informed about official announcements and reliable updates is essential because details can change quickly, and small shifts in categories, dates, or country lists can dramatically alter what is possible at any given moment. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to AXU Immigration News for more clear, accurate, and timely immigration news. Share this video with someone who needs to know. Goodbye.